Welcome back. We're reading the book Travels in the Northlands, and next chapter is about Marcuria. And next and final chapter, actually. Marcuria. O Marcuria, thou unkempt diamond, of capitals thou art by truth the fairest. Thy counsel many seek, for knowledge kept within is centuries sought and gathered. By men wiser than the ages, brought hither by word of mouth. Marcuria, change thou not the course of war. Between thine people, diplomat, wise man, magician, all this and more. Thou hast without equal the mark of merit and virtue. Written by Jermaine Uthrin, the poet. The august capital of Ireed, the unified country, Marcuria lies on the hardy southern coasts of the Northlands, halfway between Tyrone and Coruscant. It is a port of call for merchants, traders, adventurers and pilgrims for all four continents. A place of commerce and diplomacy for millions of humans and other species. Ireed is a strong and proud land perched between the plains of Nedra to the north, the land of the Tyrant to the west, the Great Sea to the south, and the forest of the Northlands to the east, and inhabited by humans, Dolmari, Tyrant, Mole People and Venar. Ireed was formed after Marcuria emerged as a major center for diplomacy and trade, and became the banner under which the surrounding lands united as one. Ireed is a democracy, currently led by the Chief Council of the Ireed flag, Lord Igvindellen. The High Council, composed of the ministers who govern by representation, resides in the Hall of Assembly in Marcuria, flanked by the palace and the barracks. The Ireedese are traditionalists, and their form of government has barely changed over the last few millennia. In High Tongue, Ireed means unification or assembly. Marcuria is one of the largest cities of Arcadia, the capital of Ireed, and a center for trade, diplomacy and cultural diversity. Populated by a large variety of races from human to Venar, Marcuria has grown from its origins as the birthplace of humanity to a city of all Arcadians and the hub of the civilized world. Founded 20,000 years ago at the shore of the then unconquerable ocean, it is the first known permanent settlement of the emerging human race. Initially left to its own devices by more developed races, Marcuria grew large and fat and wealthy. With newfound confidence, it passed through a period of expansion which gained it a reputation as a merciless aggressor, which soon brought violent attention from the Tyrant in the west and the Dolmari in the north. After years of war, Marcuria was decimated and subsequently rebuilt, with sufficient reinforcements to weather attacks from both sea and land. Peaceful times followed, whereupon Marcuria settled into the role it has in today's Arcadia. Although all surrounding areas fall under its jurisdiction, there is sufficient self-governing and few central taxes to appease all but the most disgruntled. The huge areas of farmland around the city benefit from the well-kept roads, markets and the busy export to other lands. Nearby villages benefit from the military might of Marcuria, protecting them against roving barbarians and tyrant armies. And Marcuria also provides the people of the Northlands with one of the best and busiest ports in Arcadia, allowing travel to distant destinations around the world. Okay, well that finishes that.
Are you done? Let me take that back for you. Oh, goodness, it's you again. Oh, you gave me such a fright.
Could I see some more books?
Oh, certainly. What a silly question.
Okay, well we have one more book left at the moment, which is about Arcadian folktales.
I'd like to read some Arcadian folktales.
A favored topic of mine. I have just what you're looking for.
Yeah, hurry up.
I did find something of interest. I'll leave it here for you to read.
Only he walked a little bit quicker. Okay. Arcadian folktales then. Sadra, the faithful wife. Sadra was married to a brute of a man named Care, which is a sort of ironic name then, if he's a brute. Anyway, he was a bully who drank, cursed, gambled, and beat up his wife when he'd lost coins at the cups table. Still, Sadra treated Care with respect and care. She fed him when he was hungry, she made his bed and washed his back, and she laid down with him when he told her to. She never complained of her hardships to anyone, even though some days she woke up with bruises all over her body. Despite her husband's treatment, Sadra was a beautiful woman, with lovely dark hair and green eyes, and men would admire her when she went to the market for food, or the town, well, for water. But none dared approach her, fearing her dangerous husband more than they admired her beauty and grace. People would say, "Poor Sadra, she deserves better than what she has. She is so good and patient, even though her husband mistreats her every day." But no one was willing to do anything to free her from her husband, as they all feared his wrath. "She chooses her own path," they would say, "and it is not our duty to interfere." Then one day a tall and handsome prince rode into town to visit with the elder council. When he spotted Sadra carrying 2 heavy buckets from the well to her home on the edge of town, he was taken with her beauty and youth, and he jumped down from his horse to help carry her buckets home. On the way, he offered Sadra courtship, but when told she was already married, he bowed respectfully and excused himself for acting inappropriately. That night, Sadra's husband heard about the prince helping his wife, and after striking her down for letting royalty interfere with her duties, he strode drunkenly, for he had already had his usual fill of dark ale, towards the tavern where the prince and his cohorts were staying. When Care arrived at the tavern, the prince was eating dinner, and when told Sadra's husband was here to see him, the prince stood and waved the man closer. "I must congratulate you on your good taste in marriage," said the prince, "for your wife is the most beautiful and good-hearted woman I have ever met." And then he offered Care a seat and a tall mug of ale. But the angry husband did not appreciate the prince's advances, and he drew a sword and lunged at the prince before his guards could react. The prince was quick and lucky to avoid certain death, and before Care could make a second strike, the prince had recovered his sword from where it stood by the wall, and stood ready to fight the brute. "Leave him be," called the prince when his guards drew arms and ran to protect their liege. "This is between him and me." Smiling briefly, he nodded his head to Care, and stood to attention. Obviously, his skill with the sword was formidable. Care, a coward at heart, knew that if he fought fairly, he would surely die, and he sheathed his sword, but loosened the knife he had tucked up his long sleeve. "My pardon, Prince," said Care. "My love for my wife is such that I am blinded by jealousy. I offer you friendship and apologies." He extended an open hand to the prince, and smiled a broad lizard smile. The prince, unaware of Care's mistreatment of his faithful wife, smiled back, put down his sword and extended his own hand. "Your apology is accepted, sir." Then, suddenly, Care's knife was in his hand and moving in a blur towards the prince's exposed throat. Had it not been for the quick eye of a nearby guard, who with the broadside of his sword struck Care on the side of his head, the prince would have been dead. The knife carved a deep scar in the prince's shoulder, but it did no serious harm. Care was taken away to the town prison to be judged when the sun rose. His crime was surely punishable by death, especially if Sadra would testify to his cruelty in front of the judge. Free of Care's tyranny, the townspeople now spoke of Sadra's suffering by her husband's hand, but Sadra would not herself, even now, speak against her husband, and instead of being sentenced to death, Care was sent away to work the king's mines for 25 years. Taken with her faithfulness, the prince yet again offered Sadra courtship, but again Sadra declined, for she was still a married woman. Then, 1 year later, Care attempted to escape the king's mines by killing 2 guards and climbing the walls, but he was shot down with an arrow and died in agony and disgrace. Again the prince visited Sadra's town, bringing condolences and renewed offer of courtship, and this time Sadra agreed. Months later, the prince and Sadra were married in a glorious ceremony, and when the old king died, the prince became regent and Sadra his queen. She was as good a queen as the land has ever seen, and she was loved dearly until the day she died. and her funeral was the grandest and most tearful in memory. Well, there's one more folktale to go, but we'll read that in the next video.